Since transactions are resource intensive, there are some considerations to keep in mind when creating them. One thing to keep in mind is making sure that the search that precedes the transaction command is optimized as much as possible. Including search best practices and being specific using field value pairs that will be used in the transaction command will return the events that we want to work with. We can see in this example here that the search on the left returned more events in a slower amount of time than the search on the right, which filters events in the basic search that contain an action of purchase and add to cart. The transaction command is a resource-intensive command. Therefore, it is in our best interest to use the stats command whenever possible. However, there are instances where the transaction command comes in handy, and that is when events need to be seen correlated together and displayed in the raw event view for analysis. The stats command is a transforming command. Therefore, it will transform your data into a table in visualization, allowing you to perform calculations on your data. Let's look at a couple searches that produce the same results, but one search contains a transaction command and the other contains a stats command. If we take a look at an example here and specify the time range using the earliest and latest time modifiers, looking back at data a year ago up until now, remember the earliest and latest time modifiers take precedence over the time range set in the time range picker. This search is taking a while to complete because it is searching across the last year's worth of data. We are going to pipe to the transaction command and group together all of the events that share the same value in the JSession ID field. From there, we will place JSession ID, the actions and product names onto a table so that we can see the associated actions and product names that pertain to each session. Now, this is our result, and if we take a look at the Search Job Inspector, we can see that this search scanned over 1 million events, returned about 5,000 events in 10.199 seconds. Now let's rearrange this search. Still searching across the last year's worth of data, this time using the stats command instead of the transaction command, and looking at the unique values of action, the unique values of product name, and let's display this in a table. We're splitting that by JSession ID, and if we take a look at the Search Job Inspector, this search ran in 2.757 seconds, completing a lot faster than the search using the transaction command. Another difference between stats and transaction is that transaction has a limit on how many events can be grouped together within a transaction, and that is 1,000. Once that 1,000 limit is reached, a new transaction grouping will be created. However, the stats command does not have a limit, therefore it will keep the grouping.